This has been Shadow Soldiers 2, Shadow Soldier Series, written by Rath W. Asing, narrated by Stephen Floyd. Copyright 2017 by William C. Joyce III. Production copyright by William C. Joyce III. About the author. Rath W. Asing is a pseudonym, an anagram created to remove celebrity from the author and place the focus on the central message of these adventures and other books contemplated. The E is silent. So is the warrior. But the vigilance, while silent, is real. The author can be identified as a part of these novellas, a character, either unique or composite, that moves through these military thrillers. As the publishing editor and an advocate of these adventures, I requested more background, but the dark stare ended my inquiry. Anonymity is an asset to those who walk the dark side of our world. It is a double-edged sword, taking away the rights of the individual for full disclosure, but providing shelter for the bearer of the burden of our protection. In my last conversation with the author, he indicated his prayer was that someday dark soldiers would not be necessary. On this and the underlying message of these stories, I place my credence of the author's good character. William Joyce, Project Advocate. Payday Blues. Chapter 1, Finding Work. Everybody needs cash. The mercenary can gain substantial capital infusions from missions, but these windfalls can be few and far between. Establishing a network of connections requiring our unique skills is just good business. For me, establishing contacts within the nation's alphabet soup agencies provides the right kind of network to cultivate. Of course, it takes another persona, something a little different than a sweet old man playing with puppets around the pool. The old man leaves the apartment and transforms into a security consultant by the name of Peter Arthur Gaines. Following my normal egress procedure, I donned my prosthetics and worked my way to my beat-up pickup truck. Then a short drive to the municipal parking structure in Irving, Texas. I took a non-direct route, checking my rearview mirror for curious followers, stopping to transform personas. Once assured, I pull in and go directly to the third floor of the parking structure next to a metallic bronze 1967 Cougar convertible with a car cover. I knew it would be there, and I knew it would be untouched. It sits next to 3 other car enthusiast vehicles belonging to members of the Irving police force. The bridgeway to the police station is within sight of the 4 covered vehicles. "Pete, when are you ever going to get rid of that beat-up truck?" Carl Jennings' voice echoed off the concrete walls, filled with laughter. The Irving police chief owned the 1961 jewel blue Corvette with the optional hardtop in the next parking spot. The car was awaiting a sunny day or a parade. Carl had several classic vehicles, but this was his baby, and he kept a close eye on it. "There's something about sticking with the one that brought you." I turned and reached out for his offered hand. "Old Tin Lizzie here has taken me places and seen wonders that do not belong in a junkyard. Besides, where I normally park is not as well guarded as the Cougar." I dressed in pressed slacks and a blue button-down collar shirt with my dark blue tie knotted loose. Carl changed direction, leading us back to the station. "Listen, Carl, I'm not going to make the parade on the 4th. Do you think Carol would like to take the Cougar?" We had a tradition of driving in the local parades, stretching back 8 years, and our 2 convertibles were always there to anchor the classic car section of the parade. "I'm sure she would love to." Carl opened the door, holding it for me. "You do know that she uses the key you gave her." "Carl, your wife is so beautiful, I would consider it a blessing if she stole it." We reached his office, and I closed the door to get a little privacy. All she has to do is flutter those lashes, and the car is hers. Carl laughed and poured 2 cups of dark roast coffee from a carafe, handing me mine. I thank God every day for the gift of the dark brew, and took it plain so as not to detract from the blessing on the tongue. "What brings you here, besides that found-on-road dead bucket of bolts?" "I'm taking a trip down to New Orleans to do some work with Alan." The conversational style fit well with our ongoing relationship. I've known Carl for 10 years and worked with his men in a few nasty drug cases. He and those around him knew me to be a security consultant who spent most of his time on the road in parts unknown, hence the reason for parking the Cougar in the police garage. Alan James Gagnon is part of our vintage car club. His 1940 Packard 180 has a reserved spot in the garage when in town. He's also a DEA agent working out of the New Orleans office. We met in Afghanistan, and I looked him up when I returned. He gave me my first security consulting job and now keeps my number on speed dial. His call came in at a convenient time. I had no missions planned, and the old piggy bank needed a refill. The city of New Orleans held two delightful pastimes for me: shrimp étouffée and late-night blues. Besides, the sun was shining, and the roads called for my 287 Cougar's deep rumbling sound. There's nothing finer than a classic rolling down the highways of America. New Orleans. The drive completed, placing my Cougar in proper storage and the first of many delightful Cajun delicacies consumed, I headed to the Blues Balcony, a small tavern near the docks. The proprietor, known to the local authorities and a few agencies, provides quiet rooms upstairs when privacy is required. Alan would be sitting at the bar sipping a beer, listening to the early evening jam session, or perched on a stool with his sax filling the room with mournful notes. Walking in, I was glad to hear it was the latter. The session was in full swing, Alan just finishing a run. He sat down and motioned me towards the bar for a cold one. Later, we would talk and the business of security would begin. Now, we would immerse our souls in the sounds of New Orleans. Tarnished Guardians. Chapter 1. Crime Scene. Vacation Interrupted. Meigs, Naval Lieutenant Commander Catherine Marie Callahan of JSOC, carefully marked off the basement of the upscale residential home in the suburbs of Toms River, New Jersey. This was not her type of case, but there was no questioning the orders received in the middle of the night. When Admiral Alexander Peoples gets you out of bed, you jump, however high he commands. The crime scene was completely contaminated. State police, Tom Rivers detectives, and even 2 reporters destroyed the scene prior to Meg's arrival. The cement floor, stained a dark rusty red by the dried caked blood, affirmed the massacre. The 6 victims had been tied to chairs and tortured, according to the reports, for up to 3 days. They were then summarily executed by slitting their throats. Blood pools and the multiple cutting tools left scattered around the room showed a complete lack of humanity by the perpetrator or perpetrators. The scrap of a blueprint, evidence item number 638-21, had no scale of reference and was blown up beyond valid recognition. Meigs made a mental note to inspect the original, muttering under her breath. With all the CSI TV shows, you'd think real crime scene investigators would have gotten the hint. It did not matter. A scrap of blueprint woke up the Admiral Chief of Naval Operations, along with 14 other high-ranking officials in and around their 5-sided labyrinth in Washington, D.C. The Department of Defense swung into action because a rookie detective, just released from his stint in the Army, knew something his detective buddies did not. Training remembered. Detective Benjamin Collingsworth served with distinction and began his second career in his hometown of Toms River. Still the short end of rookie jokes and coffee runs, he carefully logged in every piece of evidence until he handled the scrap of blueprint. Calling for someone to take his place at the table, he carefully picked up the evidence bag and found better light for his inspection. Then, shouting to the ranking officer on scene, he broke procedure, running across the crime scene and up the stairs. Reaching the detective in charge, Emily Burke Hansen, he demanded her attention, most likely ending his career. "Detective Hansen," he yelled, getting her to stop and turn. "This is national security and top priority." Emily paused, making sure she gained eye contact, then took 3 steps, bringing her within inches of the new detective. Her Chanel perfume curiously enhanced her smoldering rage. Benjamin had stood in front of terrifying drill sergeants and thunderous commanders without withering. His shoulders straightened and his gaze hardened. "Ma'am." Eternities passed, and finally the chief of detectives broke. "What is so important that you would risk your career?" This scrap came from a military blueprint, and unless I'm mistaken, it is top secret and highly dangerous in the wrong hands. You need to stop everything and call the Department of Defense and Homeland Security. Can you give me one sane reason why this scrap of paper is so important? Sure can. He moved to the detective's side and brought the evidence bag into the proper light. See that navigation ship right there? He used a pencil to direct her eyes. That has never been outside the Pentagon's weapons vault since the day my team escorted it there 8 months ago. Emily turned to her assistant and quickly had him clear the crime scene. Calling for a phone, she made the call that got generals jumping and pulled Meg's back from vacation. No promotion and you're still on coffee detail, but your job is secure, Benjamin. Good work. The chief of detectives did not get to her position by walking on her fellow detectives. She got there by keeping the case at the center of her actions. Decisions made. Meggs arched her back and slowly scanned the basement one more time. Walking carefully through the scene, she gained access to the stairs and went up and out of the building through the kitchen door. There, patiently waiting for his next order, the young detective used his boot to trace zigzags in the dirt below the swing he sat on. Seeing Meggs, he jumped to his feet and stood at attention, only giving a half salute this time. He caught her momentary smile. It made her face more beautiful than anything his dreams could imagine. He stared shamelessly, watching her approach. "All right, DB," she nicknamed him from the moment they met. "You and I have a lot of detecting to do. Let's get you processed for JSOC clearance and get on with it." Not sure if DB stood for Detective Benjamin or Dumb Blockhead. Benjamin didn't care. This was the case and the investigator for me. My God, she's beautiful. "Yes, ma'am. Where's our next stop?" "Number 1, it's Meg's. Drop the ma'am crap. Number 2, I may have rank, but I am a working Navy brat. While we're together, we are equals until you prove different." Meggs pointed to the car, and Benjamin took off at the trot to get there before his new teammate. Unsure if chivalry was allowed, he opened the passenger side door and stood aside to let her in. "DB, stop horsing around and get in. I'm driving." Cold Return. Chapter 1. Sniper versus Sniper. Mission specs. Fiction means not real. You be the judge. Names of individuals have been left out or altered for my protection. I fully redact my mission notes as a regular part of my security procedure and, as you will see, my personal safety as well. Countries and dates have been chosen to allow the story to have a place and time. They are not the actual countries and or time frames, which have been redacted. I finished the preparation of my cave encampment, building a small fire at the entrance just as the sun retreated behind the western mountains of the stone-filled valley. The roasting rabbit and the pot of snow would be a feast after 2 days running from a determined assassin. Taking to the desolate mountains was the last resort, and I knew it. With the fire refreshed and the meal put away, I moved back into the cave. Not to use my bedding, but to shinny up the natural chimney within the cavern. It was a 70-foot climb, and I did it in complete darkness, feeling for the handholds and crevices as I inched my way up. Near the top, a small side tunnel to the face of the cliff allowed me to observe the mountains to the west. There were 3 places I would have set up an ambush. The sniper was in the third and the least likely because of the extreme distance of the shot. I used an infrared scope while I knew the assassin focused his targeting on the fire I had made. From my vantage point, the lower half of the assassin's body was blocked by the stone of the mountain. I eased behind the rifle sights, taking a deep breath and letting the air out slowly, clearing my mind of all but the target. Muscle memory and years of practice took over, launching the projectile. Seconds passed, and the body slumped. I maintained my position and reloaded, but there would be no need. 15 minutes later, the winter's cold faded the infrared image as the assassin passed into eternity. Getting back down was a little more challenging, but I knew I needed the fire and its warmth if I was to survive the mountain. I had escaped the second assassin sent to kill me. It would be an unfortunate story if I ended up a frozen corpse huddled in these lonely mountains. I had an ending to this particular stalk I preferred, an ending where I was home, and the nightmare of being hunted came to an end. My journey was far from complete. Home would have to wait while I searched for the person who sent the assassin. It was time to take action. Passion's Pathway. Chapter 1. A Peaceful Life. My routine has become a natural progression of peaceful days. It is an enjoyment I never expected, but I rejoice daily. What the world sees each morning is a man shutting the main door to a 3-story mansion and, walking stick in hand, descending the steps to the flower-lined pathway leading to the Boulevard de Santos, which gradually wanders down to the sea and the docks filled with merchant vessels. Directly across from the busy piers, where the boulevard gives way to the industry of shipping, stands a long row of warehouses. The third one in has a windowed front which provides a view of a tired old office, revealing a simple desk and a well-worn chair. The rest of the unadorned room holds wooden crates of different sizes to help shippers decide how their cargo will travel. It is my office. Each morning I arrive promptly at 8, and after a full day of phone calls, I leave and hurry back up the boulevard promptly at 3. Entering the main door, I once again embrace the joy I found in the jungle doing the chores of another life I once lived. Of boys and adventure. The youth of the neighborhood race around the docks, looking at the spectacular display of interesting people traveling from the furthest parts of the world, as the desire for adventure bites them. I remember the feeling from my own youth and the U.S. Navy recruiter who painted a picture of excitement. He did not lie, and I found all the excitement he foretold and much more. I had 8 years in the service and 8 more as a mercenary. I've seen adventure. 2 young men, prodding each other, finally opened the door and strut into my office. "Why do you sit here all day when you could be out there riding the waves and finding adventure?" He stood tall, needing some definition to his muscled body, but filled with an attitude of action. "Do you really want to know about adventure?" I set down the paper I was reading and looked at the 2 boys. "Or do you want to know what true happiness is?" The other boy spoke up. "Both." "Then let me tell you a story."